All right, so you've handed us, well, a mountain of reports and press releases, all about ITC Limited's performance for their third quarter of fiscal year 2025.
A deep dive into this Indian conglomerate, huh? It seems like they're involved in everything. Consumer goods, agriculture, hotels, even paper.
Yeah, exactly. It's really fascinating how diverse their businesses are. Almost like, I don't know, like a mini Berkshire Hathaway of India.
Interesting comparison.
So let's dive into these numbers and see what we can learn about their recent performance. What were some of the things that jumped out at you as we were going through all of this?
Well, first off, you've got to consider the backdrop. The Indian economy has been facing some headwinds lately, right? Slowing growth, inflation, a little bit of weak consumer demand.
Right.
Despite all of that, it seems ITC has shown resilience, and their diverse portfolio seems to be helping them weather the storm. Their gross revenue is up 8.4% year-on-year.
Not bad.
Driven largely by their agribusiness, their hotels, and, of course, cigarettes.
Of course, right. That's their legacy. Right?
Exactly.
So they're weathering the storm, but are they thriving? What does their bottom line look like?
Well, their profit after tax grew by 2.1%.
Okay.
Which, considering the economic climate, isn't too shabby.
Right, right.
And the board has recommended an interim dividend of 6 rupees 50 paise per share.
That suggests confidence in their performance.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Anything else interesting about those top-line numbers?
Well, their consolidated figures, which, include all their subsidiaries, actually paint a more positive picture. Consolidated revenue is up about 9%, and consolidated profit after tax, excluding exceptional items, that's up 2.2%.
So a solid foundation.
Yeah.
Even if some areas are outperforming others. One thing that really stood out to me was all this talk about a demerger in their hotel business.
Yeah.
What exactly happened there?
Yeah. ITC made a pretty big move by spinning off their hotels business into a separate listed company, now known as ITC Hotels Limited, or ITCHL for short. This took effect at the start of this year, January 1st.
What was the thinking behind that? Was hotels dragging down their overall performance?
No, quite the opposite, actually. ITCHL had a fantastic quarter. Their revenue jumped by 14.6%, and their profit soared by an incredible 43.4% compared to the same period last year.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah. This suggests that maybe being part of the larger conglomerate was holding the hotels business back. Now they have more freedom, they can operate independently, focus on their own growth strategies.
So it seems like this demerger really paid off for them. What's driving this kind of success for ITCHL?
Well, they've seen robust growth in their retail, wedding, and food and beverage segments.
Makes sense. Those are big markets.
Right. But what's really impressive is how they've managed costs and efficiency. They've achieved a 450 basis points expansion in their EBITDA margin. Essentially, they're squeezing more profit out of every rupee they earn.
Yeah, that's impressive.
Yeah.
All right, let's turn to I guess you could say the elephant in the room,
Right.
or the cigarette in the pack.
Yeah.
ITC is still heavily associated with cigarettes. How's that business performing in today's environment?
Cigarettes are still a major revenue generator for them. It's their legacy business, a big part of their identity. But they are facing some headwinds, from illicit trade and those high taxes on tobacco in India.
Yeah, I can imagine. So how is ITC navigating this tricky landscape?
Well, they've been putting in place some smart strategies, things like targeted market interventions and really cracking down on illicit trade. They're focusing on specific competitive belts. All of this has helped them achieve 8.1% revenue growth in the cigarettes segment.
Okay, so still growing.
Right.
Interesting. What else are they doing?
What I find particularly interesting is their focus on differentiated and premium cigarette offerings. Think brands like Classic Connect, Gold Flake Indie Mint. These are resonating well with consumers.
Those are brands even I recognize, and I'm not a smoker. It seems like they're catering to a more, I don't know, discerning consumer, maybe looking for a higher quality experience.
Right. Someone willing to pay a premium.
Exactly. So the cigarette business is holding strong, but what about the future?
Well, there's a development that could really change the game in the fight against illicit trade.
What's that?
The government's recent budget proposal for a track and trace mechanism for cigarettes. If they implement this effectively, it could be huge.
Track and trace. Now, can you explain that a little bit? What exactly does that mean and how would it work?
Sure. Imagine you can follow a pack of cigarettes from the factory all the way to the point of sale. This track and trace system would essentially create a digital fingerprint for each pack, so authorities could verify its authenticity and track its journey through the whole supply chain.
Oh, that's interesting.
It could help curb the flow of those counterfeit and smuggled cigarettes, and that would create a more level playing field for legitimate businesses like ITC.
Right, right.
Of course, how effective it is depends on the implementation, which remains to be seen.
All right, so we'll have to keep an eye on that. So cigarettes, they're holding strong, but the future depends on a lot of factors. Let's move on to their other consumer goods, the ones they call FMCG, others. So we're talking flour, soaps, a whole bunch of products, right?
Yeah.
How did that segment perform this quarter?
Yeah, so despite the somewhat muted consumer demand we mentioned earlier, this segment still delivered a respectable 4% revenue growth.
Okay, not bad.
And what really stands out is their strategic approach to dealing with inflation. They're really focusing on premiumization, cost management, and some strategic pricing actions.
Can you give an example of what this premiumization strategy actually looks like in practice?
Sure. Their Ashirvad Atta, it's a wheat flour, a staple in many Indian kitchens. That's a prime example. It's solidified its market leadership, still performing well, even with some consumers tightening their belts. So they're willing to pay a premium for trusted brands.
Interesting. So it's not just about the cheapest option anymore.
Right, exactly. They're also seeing growth in categories like spices, snacks, including frozen snacks, dairy products, and some premium personal wash items. It seems like there's a shift happening. Consumers are looking for higher quality, value-added products, and ITC is really capitalizing on this trend.
So they're strategically elevating their offerings to meet these evolving consumer demands. Now, we've talked about cigarettes, we've talked about their consumer goods. You mentioned that their agribusiness is a real bright spot this quarter. What's going on there?
Yeah, Agri-Business is truly shining this quarter. Revenue shot up by 9.7%, and their profit jumped by an impressive 21.6% year-on-year.
Wow, so what's fueling that kind of growth?
It seems to be driven by a couple of key factors. Firstly, they're really benefiting from strong export demand, especially for their leaf tobacco and value-added agri products.
So not just raw commodities.
Right. Things like coffee and spices in particular are performing exceptionally well in those international markets. And here's where it gets really exciting. ITC is also investing in some innovative initiatives, things like medicinal and aromatic plant extracts, or MAPE for short.
MPE. That sounds intriguing. What's that all about?
Well, essentially, they're extracting those valuable compounds from plants for use in a wide range of applications: pharmaceuticals, cosmetics, food, beverages.
So kind of like tapping into the natural world, the power of plants.
Right. It's a high-growth market. Lots of potential there.
Sounds like they're always looking for new avenues for growth, diversifying and going beyond that traditional image of just a cigarette company.
Absolutely. It really highlights their willingness to embrace innovation, adapt to those changing market dynamics. They're not afraid to explore new possibilities, which is essential for any company looking to thrive in this century.
So we've covered cigarettes, hotels, consumer goods, and this booming agricultural business. Is there anything else in this vast empire of ITC?
Well, one area is facing some pretty strong headwinds. Their paperboards, paper, and packaging segment.
Right. Paper. So what's happening there? Are they struggling to keep up with, I don't know, the digital age?
It's more nuanced than that. They're being hit by a few things all at once. Low-priced imports are flooding the market, especially from places like China and Indonesia.
Right.
Soft domestic demand isn't helping either. And to top it all off, wood prices, a key input, are soaring.
Tough combination.
Yeah, it's squeezing their margins, and the revenue growth in this segment has been limited to just 3.1% year-on-year.
So it's a really challenging environment for paper products. Are they doing anything to try and turn things around, or are they just battening down the hatches and hoping for the best?
ITC isn't one to just sit back passively. They're focusing on what they call portfolio augmentation, basically developing innovative, higher-value products that can set them apart from the competition.
Makes sense. Give us an example of what this looks like in practice.
A great example is their recent launch of the Philobev Mini.
Philobev Mini, what is that?
Well, think about those little plastic cups you often see, the ones used for like espresso shots or small desserts.
Yeah.
The Philobev Mini is designed to replace those. It's a sustainable paperboard solution, and it really taps into that growing consumer demand for eco-friendly alternatives to single-use plastics.
Interesting. So they're aligning themselves with this bigger trend towards sustainability, which could give them an edge.
Exactly.
But is this, is this genuine commitment to sustainability or just a savvy marketing move?
Well, ITC has a long history of commitment to sustainability that goes way beyond just this one product. They've been recognized for their exceptional performance in water management. They've been water positive for 22 years, carbon positive for 19 years, and recycling positive for 17 years.
Wow, that's quite a track record, especially for a company of their size and scope.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive.
It seems like they're really walking the walk, not just talking the talk.
Absolutely. Their efforts have earned them some high ratings from organizations like MSCI ESG and the Dow Jones Sustainability Emerging Markets Index.
So they're being recognized as leaders in this space.
Yeah, not just within India, but globally.
So as we kind of wrap up this first part of our deep dive into ITC, what would you say is the key takeaway so far?
What strikes me is ITC's remarkable transformation. They're moving away from that traditional reliance on cigarettes and evolving into a more diversified, more sustainable, more future-focused business.
Right.
They're doing this with a strong financial foundation, a very committed leadership team, and a clear vision for what they want to achieve. They're navigating a complex economic landscape, facing challenges in some areas while excelling in others.
Yeah, it's a fascinating story, isn't it? A blend of tradition and innovation, resilience and adaptability. It really makes you wonder, what will the next chapter hold for this Indian giant?
That's a question we can delve into further as we explore their financials and leadership in more detail in the next part of our deep dive.
Sounds good. Let's take a quick break and we'll be right back. So we've seen ITC juggling this diverse portfolio of businesses, right? Some doing really well, others facing tougher times. But how about their overall financial health? Can they handle these economic bumps and still keep investing in their future?
That's the million-dollar question. To figure that out, we need to look beyond just the quarterly performance and dig deeper into their balance sheet, their debt, and their cash flow. Those are the vital signs, for a company's long-term health.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So let's start with the balance sheet. What are the key things to watch out for?
Well, one important indicator is the debt-to-equity ratio. It basically tells you how much they're using borrowed money compared to, the value owned by shareholders. A high ratio can be a bit of a red flag, means they might be a bit vulnerable if things get rocky.
So lower is better, generally speaking. How's ITC doing in that department?
Looking at the reports you've given us, ITC actually has a very healthy debt-to-equity ratio. They're not overly reliant on debt, which is a good sign. They seem to be funding their growth pretty responsibly through their earnings.
Okay, that's reassuring. What about their cash flow? Can they cover their expenses, pay dividends, and still have enough left over to invest in new ventures?
Their cash flow statement looks pretty solid, too. They're generating a good chunk of cash from their operations, which gives them a lot of flexibility. They can fund new products, strategic acquisitions, all sorts of growth opportunities without having to borrow too much.
Sounds like they're on pretty solid financial ground. That's crucial, especially given the unpredictable economic environment. Anything else stand out to you from their financials?
You know what impressed me? Their commitment to research and development. Even with all this economic uncertainty, they're still investing in R&D. Shows they're thinking long-term, realizing innovation is key to staying ahead of the game.
Yeah, it's easy to cut R&D when times get tough, but it often comes back to bite you later. Smart move by ITC.
Exactly. Investing in the future while navigating the present, that's the sign of a well-managed company.
So we've talked about their financial performance, their diverse range of businesses, their commitment to sustainability. Now let's talk about the people behind it all. Who's steering this ship?
Well, at the helm is Sanjeev Puri, their chairman and managing director. He's been in that role since 2018. Gained a lot of respect for his strategic vision, his ability to, maneuver through these complex markets.
5 years at the top of a company like ITC is quite impressive. What's his leadership style like?
He's known for being forward-thinking, very adaptable. He really emphasizes agility and being responsive to changes in consumer behavior and market trends. You can see it in their actions, right? The hotels demerger, the focus on premium products, those sustainable packaging ventures. These are bold moves, all aimed at positioning ITC for the future.
It seems like he's not just reacting to change, but actively shaping the direction of the company. Any other examples of that forward-thinking approach?
One that comes to mind is his focus on increasing agricultural productivity and farmer incomes in India. Makes perfect sense, given ITC's strong presence in the agribusiness. He's thinking about the broader impact, not just the company's bottom line.
So it's about purpose as much as profit. It seems like he's leading ITC with a triple bottom line approach, considering people and the planet alongside those financial results.
Exactly. He understands that long-term success means taking a more holistic approach, creating value for everyone involved.
All right, so as we wrap up this part of our deep dive into ITC, what's the key takeaway for our listeners?
I think the most important takeaway is that ITC is a company in transition. They're shifting away from their traditional reliance on cigarettes and moving towards a more diversified, more sustainable, more future-focused business model. They've got a strong financial foundation, a committed leadership team, and a clear vision.
A company in transition. It's an interesting story, isn't it? Navigating a complex world, showing signs of promise and resilience, makes you wonder what's next for them, what challenges and opportunities lie ahead.
Well, those are questions we can explore as we move into the final part of our deep dive, where we'll take a closer look at the road ahead for ITC.
We've seen how ITC is managing this complex juggling act with all their different businesses, but every company faces challenges, right?
Yeah.
What are some of the biggest risks for ITC? What could potentially derail their plans?
Well, those economic headwinds we talked about, they're definitely a factor. If India's growth slows down even more, or if inflation stays high, it's going to affect consumer spending, and that's going to impact a lot of ITC's businesses.
Right, of course. Those are external factors, things they can't really control.
Yeah.
But what about internal risks? They're going through this massive transition, right? Moving away from cigarettes, becoming more diversified. How smoothly can that actually happen?
Yeah, that's a key question. It's not easy for a company with such a long history, a deeply ingrained culture, to just shift gears like that.
Right.
How do they make sure these new ventures, these new businesses, get the resources they need to succeed without neglecting the core businesses?
Yeah, it's a balancing act for sure.
And how do they manage all those cultural shifts that come with a transformation like this?
Yeah, that's got to be tough.
And then there's the execution risk. They might have great ideas, but can they actually bring them to market, make them work?
Of course.
Like that Philobev Mini, it's a great concept, but it all depends on consumers actually using it, really.
Right.
Can they really convince people to ditch those plastic cups and switch to paperboard on a large scale?
Yeah, we'll see. So many potential pitfalls. It's a high-stakes game for sure.
It really is. Highlights just how complex the business environment is these days.
It's not just about making products and selling them anymore, right?
Exactly. It's about anticipating trends, managing risks, adapting to change, and creating value for all these different stakeholders.
Right.
And ITC seems to get that. They're playing the long game. They're investing in sustainability. They're supporting farmers. They're developing these innovative products, all while keeping their finances strong and navigating this tricky economic climate.
So, as we wrap up our deep dive into ITC, what's the one final thought you want to leave our listeners with?
ITC is at a crossroads. Their decisions today are going to shape their future for years to come. They embody those challenges and opportunities businesses face in this century. Balancing profit with purpose, embracing innovation, and adapting to a world that just keeps changing.
Well said. A company in transition, a microcosm of the modern business world. It's a reminder that success these days takes more than just financial smarts, right? It takes vision, adaptability, and a real commitment to creating value for everyone.
Absolutely. And on that note, I think we've done a pretty good job unpacking this mountain of information.
I agree. We've hit the highlights, dug into the details, and hopefully given our listeners a better understanding of ITC Ltd and their place in the world.
Until next time.
Thanks for listening.